They feel pretty comfortable that Shrek has killed Nicole, but they just don't have enough to charge him. The other problem here is in Montana at the time had never had a successful prosecution of a homicide case where the victim's body was never recovered. They call it a no-body homicide.
Yeah, it's a little slangy term.
Yeah, it's definitely a law enforcement criminal justice term, but a no-body homicide is the attempt to prosecute somebody for a murder where the body, which typically is your biggest piece of evidence, is never recovered.
And it's very difficult to do.
It's extremely difficult. They're just trying to figure out what to do. And time is on their side, because if all of a sudden next week a camper or hunter finds Nicole's body, it changes everything. So 2014 rolls around. And at this point, Cody and Amber, they're a big time thing. In fact, Valentine's Day of 2014, the year anniversary, Cody proposes to Amber.
Oh, how sweet.
On Valentine's Day. So they get married a few months later, and they have a baby, little baby boy. And in August of 2015, I was asked to take a look at a set of phone records. They had this crazy homicide, or what they believed was a homicide, in Sidney, Montana, and they had never recovered the body. When I was first kind of reviewing this case to present it, is the timeline's very interesting. When it starts, we're both police officers, we're developing the company. When Cody gets married and he thinks he's in the clear, and Nicole's case has kind of hit a snag, we're right in the middle of launching this company that's the software that helps with cell phones. And a year later, we are front and center in the middle of this case looking at Cody Johnston's phone records. They also had phone calls, like who he called, where the cell site was, the sector information, which is which antenna on the cell site it connected to. They had all that figured out. They had some other records that's called timing, and these can be very, very challenging records. And the columns alone, there's over 100 columns of data, just random numbers. And if you don't know what you're looking at, it just looks like a bunch of decimal point numbers.
Well, not only is it 100 columns of data, it's also hundreds of rows of information, depending upon how many days of information they got.
I was doing a lot of work with Verizon. I understood these records really, really well. So they sent them to me, and I looked at it, and I thought, man, these are some of the best records I've seen in a long time. You guys have beautiful records. And they're like, what are you talking about? We have no idea what we have here. So I start looking at them, and we're going to find some interesting little links here.
Okay.
I don't know anything about the case at this point. So I map the records, and with these records, if you know what you're looking at, you can get near GPS accuracy. It's random. It's these random hits throughout the day. So you're not going to get this perfect breadcrumb trail where every second you're getting a location, but 6 minutes goes by, I might get 2 or 3. Another 15 minutes goes by, I get 1 more. 22 minutes later, I get 1 more. So you can start to piece together what this looks like. Well, I looked at the morning of February 14th, Valentine's Day morning. And if you remember right, this is when Cody slept in the little camp trailer at his work site. He gets up, he clocks into work, he works until noon, goes home and has lunch.
And Nicole is supposed to be going back to Kalispell.
Correct. And I have her phone too. And we have the same type of data from her phone.
Because she was on his plan.
Correct. At 6:51, there is no doubt Cody is at his work. He spent the entire night there. I do not in any way, I haven't seen anything that would show he wasn't there all night. But at 6:51, while he is at his job site, which is about 15, almost 20 miles away, he gets a text message from Nicole that says, you need to feed your dogs.
Okay. Well, did she just decided not to feed the dogs before she left his house?
Apparently. And he knows that she's leaving that morning. There's all kinds of text message history showing he knows she's leaving.
See, even if you and I were very upset with one another, I would still expect that you would take care of my dog before you left somewhere.
You know, you could try to get me back by telling me that you're pregnant when you're not, and I could probably forgive you for that. You don't feed my dog, I'm coming after you.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And I'm not saying that's the motive here.
That is grounds for death.
But it definitely starts the morning on the wrong foot.
Yeah, you can't mistreat an animal regardless of whether or not you like their owner.
Well, this pisses Cody off, I think. But I think Cody has some other things going on here where everything starts to deviate. By 7:13, he's driving. He is moving away from his place of business.
He's irritable.
But he's also calling Nicole. And this starts a little pattern. The first call is 3 minutes and 22 seconds. When he hangs up, he calls her back 68 seconds. When he hangs up this time, calls her back 44 seconds. When he hangs up that time, 35 seconds. Hangs up that time, 53 seconds. Just calling and getting hung up, calling and hanging up, calling and hanging up. The entire time, he's driving from his workplace back to the house where Nicole is at. Okay. At 7:25, She sends that text message to the friend in Kalispell, I'm on my way. By my calculations, Cody is either pulling into the driveway as she's sending this text message or within about a minute after she has sent it.
Okay.
And he goes home. From 7:25 to 7:40, he's at the house. No doubt about it. So about 15 minutes. At 7:42, he's headed back to work. So he makes the drive back to work. He arrives back to work around 8:12.
Okay.
Guess what he does?
What?
This is when he goes inside and disconnects and suspends her phone.
Oh.
He's only at work for 15 minutes. By 8:27, he's moving again. And now he's going to go to Bill's house. So he drives from his work out to Bill's house. This is the conversation. Do you have the barrel with the locking lid? Oh, can you follow me up to Poplar? After he leaves Bill's house, straight back to the house, his house. So he's back at his house. From his house...
And we don't know if he has the barrel or not.
According to Bill, he doesn't, but I don't believe Bill. I think he does. And I'll tell you why here in a little bit.
Okay.
He goes back to his house. He's at his house for only about 23 minutes. Then he goes to what I believe is a barn in between his workplace and his house that is somehow linked to family members. Of his. He's at that barn for just a little bit of time. Then he goes back up by the house, and then he heads to Poplar. Turns his phone off.
What would he do inside of a barn?
I believe he's hiding a 55-gallon drum with Nicole's body inside.
He needs to put it somewhere before somebody comes to the house looking for her.
Well, who's coming to the house?
Amber.
Do you know what's awkward when your girlfriend gets to your house?
And your other dead girlfriend is there?
Yes, it does not play out well.
That would be awkward.
Turns off his phone. He and Bill go to Poplar. They drop off Nicole's car. Timing is interesting of when he wants to play this trick on Nicole, right? Mm-hmm. Comes back as he arrives back into Sydney at 12:30. He turns his phone back on, and he is home. He stays home for a little bit of time, about 12:30, 12:45, heads back to work. He's at work the rest of the day. He leaves work around 5:30, goes home. He's at home until about 7:30. But then he leaves again. Swings by the barn, down to Sydney, and then he's going to leave on a road that's just south of Sydney, and he's going to go about 15 to 20 miles out into the nothing. Out in the fields and oil fields is all that's out there.
How many ingresses and egresses of roadway are there into and out of the Sydney area where he lives?
5. You can go due north, due south. You can go east, which is almost immediately North Dakota. Mm-hmm. And then there's 2 ways you could go out to the west. One goes up northwest and one just goes due west. He takes the one that goes due west. Okay. He's out there for about 30 minutes and then he goes back home. I believe he's now moved the barrel from the barn out to an oil field. And a 55-gallon drum sitting at some of these little oil fields or oil sites out there.
It's normal.
Nobody would think anything because Amber's showing up in the morning.
Sure.
He's got to clean out his mess, right? Mm-hmm. Which is really interesting with all of that. So Amber does show up on the 15th. They spend the weekend together. Have a great weekend according to the text messages on Sunday.
Oh.
She's very, very thankful for the time, loved their time together, and is looking forward to spending more time with him.
Well, I'm sure it was really nice that Nicole wasn't texting him over and over again.
She wasn't bothering him at all.
Just interrupting all of their loving time together.
Yes. Which is interesting because Amber had to hurry to get her text messages in about how much she enjoyed the time because she's now driving back to Lewiston and she's texting him how much she loved his trip. But then she had to hurry because he turns his phone off.
Oh. Did he explain to her that he was turning his phone off?
No. It's off for about 5.5 hours.
Oh.
As soon as Amber is out of town, we see him go back down close to the highway that leads out to the oil fields I was talking about. And as he's getting into that area, he turns his phone off. His phone is now off for 5.5 hours. He doesn't turn it on until he's coming back into Sydney. And he's on that road that kind of goes out northwest of Sydney.
So how far do you think he could have traveled within a 5.5 hour period of time, outward and back?
So there's a couple factors that are going to come into play here. Number one, it was snowing. The roads were really bad. So that immediately is going to slow down. So we have a search radius of about 150 miles around Sydney. That is enormous. You're never going to effectively search this area. It's all open. It's wide open.
Right.
So, and I got to give it to Mark Hilliard. He gave it a hell of a try. That guy's walked over all kinds of territory and terrain out there looking for poor Nicole.
The thing is, the ground would be frozen. It's going to be difficult for him to bury a barrel out there.
We're going to come back to this. And I know there was a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of like little caverns and sinkholes and old abandoned mines and drill holes out in this area. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of thoughts that maybe he knew of some of these and he just rolled the barrel down in there. But hold that thought for a second because I have a new theory that I want to get into here in a little bit.